Elena St. James had everything: a penthouse that touched the clouds, a last name that opened every door, and a father who controlled her like a puppet on golden strings. But when her new driver refused to even look at her, when he treated her coldness with silence that cut deeper than any insult, something inside her perfect frozen world began to crack. She didn't know that this quiet man with scars on his hands and walls around his heart was about to become the only person who truly saw her, or that choosing him would mean losing everything she'd spent her life building. What she also didn't know was that a hurricane was coming, and it would trap them together in ways that would change both their lives forever. One night, one storm, one choice that would either destroy her or finally set her free. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story of forbidden love and second chances is just beginning. Elena St. James woke to the sound of her phone buzzing against marble. She reached for it without opening her eyes, already knowing who it would be. Her father never slept past 6, and he expected the same from her. "The Meridian presentation is in 3 days," Richard St. James said instead of hello. "Tell me you're ready." Elena sat up in bed, her silk sheets pooling around her waist. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, the New York skyline glittered in the early morning darkness. "I'm ready." "Then why did I see photos of you leaving Cipriani at midnight? You should be working, not socializing." She closed her eyes. Someone had sold another story. Someone always did. "I was meeting with their CFO. It was a business dinner." "It looked like a date." Her father's voice was cold. "And speaking of dates, when are you going to handle Braden? He called me yesterday. Said you won't return his messages. We broke up 4 months ago. He's willing to forgive you. His family's connections could—" "I have to go," Elena said. "I'll call you after the morning meeting." She ended the call before he could respond. Her hands were shaking. They always shook after talking to her father, though she'd gotten good at hiding it. The shower was hot enough to turn her skin pink. She stood under the spray longer than she should have, trying to wash away the tightness in her chest. When she finally stepped out, wrapped in a towel, she saw 3 missed calls, all from her father. She dressed carefully. Navy suit, cream blouse, pearl earrings, the armor of a woman who belonged in boardrooms. Her reflection looked perfect, polished, empty. Her phone rang again as she was applying lipstick. "Your driver sold a story to Page 6, her father said. "About Braden's flowers, about your emotional state. He quoted you directly." Elena's hand froze. "What?" "Fire him, today, and get someone who understands discretion." The call ended. Elena stared at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale. Beneath her makeup, another betrayal. Another person who'd pretended to be loyal while counting the dollars they could make from her private pain. She pulled up the agency's number with trembling fingers. "St. James Hotels," she said when someone answered. "I need a new driver. Immediately." "Of course, Miss St. James. What happened with—" "I need someone who doesn't speak to reporters. Someone who doesn't speak at all, actually. Can you arrange that?" There was a pause. "We have someone who might work. Very professional. Former military. He's quiet." "Perfect. Have him here in 30 minutes. Elena grabbed her bag and headed for the elevator. Her building's doorman smiled at her, but she barely saw him. She was thinking about the article, about what other details her driver had shared, about how her father was right. She couldn't trust anyone. The morning air was sharp with autumn cold. Elena stood on the sidewalk, her coat wrapped tight, waiting. She expected the usual town car, the usual driver who would compliment her outfit and ask about her day while secretly cataloging everything for the next gossip column. Instead, A sleek black car pulled up that looked no different from what she was used to. But the man who stepped out was nothing like her previous drivers. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed. Easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his dark suit perfectly. His skin was a deep brown, his head clean-shaven, his jaw strong and clean-lined. He moved with a precision that made her think of soldiers or dancers, people who knew exactly where their body was in space. He walked around the car and stood by the rear door, his hands clasped in front of him. He was staring straight ahead at some point in the distance, not at her. Elena waited. Usually drivers rushed to greet her, to take her bag, to say something flattering about her appearance. This man did nothing. Just stood there, still as a statue, his face completely neutral. She walked toward him, her heels clicking on the pavement. He still didn't look at her. As she reached the car, he simply opened the door with one smooth motion and gave a slight nod. No smile. No, "Good morning, Miss St. James." Nothing. Elena hesitated, then slid into the back seat. The leather was cold against her legs. She arranged her coat and bag, waiting for him to say something through the partition or the intercom. Silence. The car pulled away from the curb so smoothly, she barely felt it. Elena glanced up at the rearview mirror, trying to catch his eyes. He was focused completely on the road, his large hands steady on the wheel. "The St. James headquarters," she said, even though the agency would have already told him. "On 5th Avenue." "Yes, ma'am." His voice was deep, quiet. That was all. Elena sat back, frustrated. She'd wanted someone who didn't gossip, but this felt almost rude. She was used to people trying to please her, to win her favor. This man seemed to actively avoid acknowledging her existence. She watched the city slide past her window. Morning traffic was building, yellow cabs weaving between lanes, pedestrians hurrying along sidewalks with coffee cups and briefcases. Her life was contained in this leather-lined box, moving from one obligation to another. "Actually," she said suddenly, "change of plans. Go to the Morgan Library first. I need to pick up some documents." She watched in the mirror for his reaction. Most drivers got flustered when she changed destinations. They would apologize, adjust the GPS, ask for clarification. This man simply flicked on his turn signal and changed lanes. The movement was so smooth and confident that she barely felt the car shift. He knew the city then, knew it well enough to redirect without hesitation. Elena felt a flicker of something. Curiosity, maybe, or irritation at being so thoroughly ignored. She pulled out her phone and pretended to check emails, but, really, she was studying him in the mirror. His eyes were dark brown, his expression calm and distant. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow, barely visible. His suit was immaculate, his tie perfectly straight. He looked expensive, but there was something else. A hardness around his mouth, a tension in his shoulders that suggested he'd rather be anywhere but here. They pulled up in front of the Morgan Library. Elena waited. Usually her driver would jump out, rush around, open her door with a flourish. This man put the car in park and sat still. Elena felt her face heat. Was he serious? She grabbed the door handle and opened it herself, stepping out onto the sidewalk. The morning air hit her face, colder than before. She glanced back. He was watching the street, his eyes scanning the area like he was expecting trouble. It was only when she was safely on the sidewalk that he relaxed slightly. Not rude, she realized. Watchful. The thought stayed with her as she went inside. She collected the folder she needed, contracts for the Meridian deal that needed her signature, and hurried back out. He was standing beside the car now, his hand on the door handle, ready. This time, when she approached, He opened the door before she reached it. Still no smile, still no small talk. Just a slight nod as she slid back into the car. "St. James headquarters now," she said. "Yes, ma'am." The car merged back into traffic. Elena found herself watching him again. The way his shoulders filled the suit jacket. The way his jaw tightened slightly when a cab cut them off. The absolute stillness of his posture. Who was this man? And why did he seem so determined to treat her like a stranger? They arrived at the St. James building, a glass and steel tower that bore her family name in letters 10 feet high. Elena gathered her things, expecting him to stay in the car as usual. Instead, he was out and opening her door before she'd finished putting her phone in her purse. He stood back, giving her space, but his eyes were scanning the street again. Looking for what? Photographers? Threats? She stood on the sidewalk, her folder tucked under her arm. She wanted to say something, to ask his name at least, but there was something in his expression that stopped her. A wall so high and thick that she knew any question would just bounce off it. "I'll be about 3 hours," she said. "I'll be here, ma'am." She waited for more, an acknowledgement that she was a person, not just a job. But he simply gave that small nod again and returned to the driver's seat. Elena walked into her building feeling strangely off balance. The security guard greeted her warmly. The receptionist complimented her suit. Her assistant met her at the elevator with coffee and a rundown of the day's meetings. Everyone wanted something from her. Everyone had an angle, except her driver, who seemed to want nothing at all. The morning crawled by in a series of conference calls and contract reviews. The Meridian deal was huge, a partnership that would expand St. James Hotels into 3 new markets. Her father had made it clear that if she closed this deal, she'd prove herself worthy of the family business. If she failed, she'd prove what he'd always suspected, that she was just a pretty face with her mother's weak heart. By noon, Elena's head was pounding. She'd skipped breakfast, survived on coffee and adrenaline. Her assistant knocked on her office door. "Miss St. James, there's a delivery for you." A crystal vase arrived, filled with white roses. Elena didn't need to read the card to know who'd sent them. "You can't run from us forever. We belong together." B. She felt something cold settle in her stomach. Braden, still refusing to accept that they were over. Still acting like her life was his to control. She picked up the vase and walked it out to her assistant's desk. "Throw these away." Her assistant's eyes widened. "But they're beautiful. Throw them away." Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. "And if he sends anything else, refuse delivery." Back in her office, she closed the door and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking again. She hated that Braden still had this effect on her. Hated that she'd once thought his possessiveness was passion. His control was protection. She'd broken up with him because she'd finally seen the truth. He didn't love her. He loved the idea of her. The St. James name, the hotel empire. The trophy wife who would look perfect in photos and never challenge him. Her phone buzzed. Another call from her father. She let it go to voicemail. At 1 o'clock, she had a lunch meeting across town. Elena grabbed her coat and headed down to the parking garage. It was darker down here, the concrete walls echoing with the sound of car engines and slamming doors. She usually felt safe in this building, but today something felt off. She heard footsteps behind her. Fast. Close. Elena spun around, her heart hammering. It was just a security guard walking his rounds. He smiled and nodded. "Sorry, Miss St. James. Didn't mean to startle you." She forced a smile back, feeling foolish, but her hands were still shaking as she approached the black town car. The engine was already running. The rear door opened before she reached it. Her driver, she really needed to learn his name, stepped out, and she saw something in his eyes. Concern, maybe, or just alertness. "Everything all right, ma'am?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. "Fine," she said, but her voice was shaky. "Just tired." He held the door, and she slid inside. The car was warm, safe. She felt herself relax slightly as they pulled out of the garage. The lunch meeting was at a restaurant near Central Park. It had started to rain, a cold autumn drizzle that made the city look gray and miserable. Elena watched the windshield wipers move back and forth, hypnotic. When they pulled up to the restaurant, she saw her driver reach for something. An umbrella, black and large. He got out and came around to her door, opening it and holding the umbrella over her head before she'd even stepped out. Elena stood on the sidewalk, confused. He was holding the umbrella positioned so that she was completely dry, but his left shoulder was getting soaked. Rain was darkening his suit jacket, dripping down his sleeve. "You're getting wet," she said. "I'm fine, ma'am." He walked her to the restaurant entrance, keeping the umbrella over her the entire time. At the door, he stepped back, and she saw that his shoulder and part of his chest were completely soaked. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. He gave that same slight nod, still no smile, but something in his eyes had softened, just a fraction. Elena hurried inside, shaking rain from her coat. Through the window, she could see him walking back to the car, moving through the rain without rushing, like he didn't even notice it. The lunch meeting was with potential investors for the Meridian deal. Elena smiled, made small talk, answered questions about projections and market analysis. But part of her mind was elsewhere, thinking about wet shoulders and quiet watchfulness. When she came out 2 hours later, the rain was worse. Her driver was there immediately, umbrella ready. This time she noticed that he'd changed his jacket. He must keep a spare in the car. Professional to the core. "Thank you," she said again as he opened her door. Then, impulsively, "What's your name?" He paused, just for a second. Their eyes met. "Marcus, ma'am." His voice when he said it was carefully neutral, but she thought she saw something flicker in his expression, like he was surprised she'd asked. "Thank you, Marcus." Another nod. The door closed, and she was alone in the back seat again. Marcus. It fit him somehow. Strong, simple, solid. The afternoon passed in more meetings, more phone calls. Elena's father called 3 times. She ignored him twice, then finally answered the third call. "The Meridian people are nervous," he said. "They think you're too young to handle this?" "I'm 28. I have an MBA. I've been working at St. James since I graduated." "And you're still single. They're old-fashioned. They want to see stability. Maybe you should reconsider Braden." Elena hung up. She sat at her desk, staring at nothing, feeling the walls of her perfect life closing in. By the time she left the office, it was after 8. The building was mostly empty, just a few workaholics like her still grinding away. Elena took the elevator down to the parking garage, exhausted. The garage was darker than usual. Half the lights seemed to be out. Her footsteps echoed off the concrete as she walked toward where the car should be. She heard footsteps behind her again. Faster this time. Closer. Elena's heart lurched. She spun around, her purse clutched to her chest like a shield. A man in a maintenance uniform was walking past, earbuds in, not even looking at her. She let out a shaky breath. This was ridiculous. She was being paranoid, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, followed, trapped. Headlights cut through the darkness. The town car pulled up smoothly, and Marcus was out and opening her door in seconds. She saw his eyes sweep the garage, assessing, checking. "Long day?" he asked as she got in. It was the first question he'd asked her. The first sign that he saw her as anything more than cargo to be transported. "Very long," she said. The car pulled out of the garage. Elena leaned her head back against the seat, closing her eyes. She felt safe here, which was strange. Safer in this car with a man she'd met that morning than she did in her own office. "Can I ask you something?" Her voice was quiet. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you have family in the city?" She watched his hands on the wheel. They tightened just slightly. His jaw shifted. "Just my mother." "Ma'am?" The way he said it made it clear the subject was closed. Elena wanted to ask more, about his military service, about what brought him to this job, about why he seemed to carry such weight in his silence. But she could feel the wall go back up, brick by brick. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they pulled up to her building, Marcus got out and opened her door as always. But this time, as she stepped out, she glanced back at him. "Thank you, Marcus, for today." "Just doing my job, ma'am." But the way he said it didn't sound dismissive. It sounded almost gentle. Elena went up to her penthouse and stood at the window, looking down at the street below. She could see the town car still parked at the curb. As she watched, Marcus got out and walked around the vehicle, checking the tires, testing the door locks, inspecting something under the hood. He was thorough, careful. He took care of things. She thought about his wet shoulder, his careful watchfulness, his quiet competence. This man who treated her like she was precious cargo, but also somehow invisible. And for the first time all day, Elena felt something other than pressure or fear or exhaustion. She felt curious. 2 days passed in a rhythm that felt almost comfortable. Marcus drove. Elena pretended not to watch him in the rearview mirror. Neither of them spoke more than necessary, but the silence had changed. It felt less hostile now, more like a truce. On the third morning, Elena woke to her phone exploding with notifications. Weather alerts, news updates, emergency warnings. A hurricane was coming. She sat up in bed, scrolling through the messages. Hurricane Olivia, upgraded to Category 3 overnight, was barreling up the coast faster than predicted. New York City was in the projected path. The mayor was urging people to evacuate or shelter in place. Her phone rang. Her father, of course. "I need you to go to Silverleaf," he said. "No greeting, no asking if she was okay. The estate needs to be secured. I'm flying to London for the investors' meeting. You handle the property." Elena rubbed her eyes. Silverleaf was the family's country estate in the Hudson Valley, about 3 hours north. A massive mansion that her great-grandfather had built, full of antiques and artwork worth millions. She hadn't been there in over a year. "The staff can handle it," she said. "Sarah evacuated yesterday. The property manager is in Florida. You're the only one available." His voice hardened. "This is your responsibility, Elena. Don't make me regret trusting you with it." The call ended before she could argue. Elena looked out her window at the sky. It was still clear, but there was something ominous in the air. A heaviness. A waiting. She pulled up the car service app and requested Marcus. Within minutes, he confirmed. She typed out the details. 3-hour drive north, overnight stay, return tomorrow. Then she started packing. By 9 a.m., she was downstairs, with 2 bags. The doorman helped her to the curb, where the town car was already waiting. Marcus stood beside it, but something was different. He'd added a heavy jacket over his suit, and she could see supplies in the trunk. Water bottles, flashlights, emergency blankets, a first aid kit. He was prepared for trouble. "Morning, ma'am," he said, taking her bags. His eyes scanned the sky briefly. Long drive ahead. We should leave soon. Storm's moving faster than they thought. It was the most he'd said to her at once. Elena nodded, surprised by the flutter of relief in her chest. He would keep her safe. She didn't know why she was so certain, but she was. The drive out of the city was tense. Traffic was heavy with people evacuating, cars packed with belongings, families arguing through open windows. Marcus navigated it all calmly, his hands steady on the wheel, his focus complete. Elena tried to work on her laptop, reviewing documents for the Meridian deal. But she kept losing focus, her eyes drifting to the sky. Dark clouds were building on the horizon, moving toward them like a wall. "Have you ever been through a hurricane?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Deployed to the Gulf Coast after Katrina. Search and rescue." She looked up, startled. "You were in the military?" "Marines. 8 years." Elena wanted to ask more, but Marcus's tone made it clear he was done sharing. She settled back in her seat, watching the landscape change from concrete and glass to trees and rolling hills. An hour into the drive, the rain started. Just a drizzle at first, then steadily heavier. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm. Marcus turned on the headlights, even though it was only mid-morning. "How much further?" Elena asked. "About 90 minutes. We'll make it before the worst hits." But 30 minutes later, they came around a bend, and Marcus had to brake hard. A large branch, maybe 15 feet long, was blocking the entire road. It must have just fallen. The leaves were still green, the wood fresh and white where it had cracked. Marcus put the car in park and turned to look at her. "I need to move that. Stay in the car, please." Before she could respond, he was out. The wind immediately caught his jacket, whipping it around him. Rain plastered his shirt to his body. Elena watched through the windshield as he approached the branch, assessing its weight and size. He bent down, got his hands under it, and lifted. The muscles in his shoulders and back strained against his shirt. His jaw was set, his movements controlled despite the wind trying to knock him sideways. Elena found herself leaning forward, mesmerized. He wasn't just strong, he was purposeful. Every motion efficient, no wasted energy. He dragged the branch to the side of the road, his shoes slipping in the mud, then came back and checked for smaller debris. Satisfied, he returned to the car. When he opened the driver's door, he was completely soaked. Water dripped from his head, ran down his neck, darkened his clothes, but his expression was calm, almost serene. "We're good," he said, starting the engine. The car moved forward, and Elena realized she'd been holding her breath. She reached into the back and found a small towel in one of her bags. "Here," she said, passing it through the partition opening. Marcus glanced at it, then at her. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he took it with a nod. "Thank you, ma'am." He dried his face and neck as he drove, one-handed, like it was nothing. Elena noticed his hands properly for the first time. Broad and scarred, the hands of someone who worked with them, who fixed things and built things. The rain got worse. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Marcus slowed down, his eyes narrowed against the sheets of water hammering the windshield. Elena gripped the door handle, her heart racing. Then the car made a strange sound. A sputter. The engine coughed. "No," Marcus said quietly. It was the first time she'd heard anything like emotion in his voice. Frustration, maybe worry. The car rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Marcus tried the ignition. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Elena felt panic rising in her throat. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees, with a hurricane bearing down on them. "Stay here," Marcus said. He grabbed a flashlight from the console and got out again. Elena watched as he opened the hood. Rain poured down on him as he bent over the engine, checking connections, testing wires. His shirt was transparent now, clinging to every muscle of his back and shoulders. She could see the defined lines of his body, the power contained there. Minutes passed. 5. 10. Elena checked her phone. No signal. They were in a dead zone. Finally, Marcus closed the hood and got back in the car. He was breathing hard, water streaming off him. Loose connection in the battery terminal. Should be fine now. He turned the key. The engine caught, roared to life. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank you. Marcus glanced at her in the mirror. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, a shared moment of vulnerability. Let's get you to safety, he said. The last hour of the drive felt endless. The storm was building to a crescendo around them, trees bending nearly horizontal, debris flying across the road. But Marcus never wavered. His hands were steady, his focus absolute. When they finally turned onto the long driveway leading to Silverleaf Estate, Elena felt tears prick her eyes. They'd made it. The house rose out of the gloom like something from a Gothic novel. 3 stories of gray stone, with turrets and balconies and hundreds of windows. It had been built by her great-grandfather in the 1920s, a monument to wealth and excess. Elena had always found it cold and unwelcoming. The iron gates were closed. Marcus stopped the car and got out to check them. After a moment, he came back. Electronic lock's not working. Power must be out already. I can force them. Do it, Elena said. She watched as he put his shoulder against one gate and pushed. Nothing. He adjusted his stance, braced his legs, and pushed harder. Slowly, with a groan of metal, the gate began to move. He pushed it wide enough for the car to pass, then did the same with the other side. When he got back in, he was breathing hard again, his jaw tight with effort. They drove up to the main entrance. The house was completely dark. No lights, no movement. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Marcus carried her bags to the front door. Elena fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. The door swung open to reveal a massive entrance hall, dark and silent. "Sarah?" Elena called. Her voice echoed off marble floors. No answer. Marcus pulled out his flashlight and swept it around the room. Furniture covered in white sheets looked like ghosts. The air was freezing. The heat was off. "Wait here," Marcus said. He moved through the house methodically, checking rooms, testing doors. Elena stood in the entrance hall, hugging herself, feeling very small and very alone. He came back 5 minutes later. "No one here. There's a note in the kitchen." They walked together to the massive kitchen. A piece of paper was on the counter, weighted down by a coffee mug. "Miss Elena, so sorry to leave before you arrived. My sister called from Albany. Said I needed to evacuate now before the roads closed. There's food in the pantry, firewood in the shed. Be safe. Sarah." Elena looked around the dark kitchen. No power, no heat, no phone signal. Just her and Marcus, alone in this enormous house with a hurricane about to hit. "Okay," Marcus said, his voice calm and steady. "First thing, we need heat. There should be a fireplace in the main room?" "Several," Elena said. "The biggest one is in the library." "Show me." They walked through the dark house together, Marcus's flashlight the only source of light. The library was a 2-story room lined with books with a fireplace large enough to walk into. Marcus knelt down and checked it. "Good, this'll work. I need to find wood and kindling. You have any candles?" Elena's mind was blank. She'd spent summers here as a child, but she'd never had to actually take care of the place. Staff did everything. I don't know, she admitted. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, for maybe the first time since they'd met. She saw something shift in his expression. Not pity exactly, but understanding. It's okay, he said. We'll figure it out together. Why don't you check the dining room and kitchen for candles? I'll get the fire started. Elena nodded, grateful for a task. She took a flashlight and started searching. In the formal dining room, she found a drawer full of long taper candles. In the kitchen, she discovered a box of emergency candles under the sink. When she returned to the library, Marcus had already built a fire. The flames were crackling, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The room was starting to warm up. Good work, Marcus said, taking the candles from her. He lit several and placed them around the room. The effect was almost magical. The dark, imposing library transformed into something intimate and welcoming. Elena sank down onto the rug in front of the fire. She was exhausted. Her clothes were damp from the humidity, her hair a mess. She probably looked terrible. Marcus stood up, brushing off his hands. His shirt was still wet from earlier, clinging to his chest and arms. In the firelight, Elena could see the definition of his muscles, the breadth of his shoulders. He looked like something carved from stone. I'm going to check the generator, he said. See if I can get it running, and board up some windows in case the glass breaks. Will you be okay here? Yes, Elena said. Then, more honestly, I don't know. I've never done this before. Done what? Any of this. Taking care of things, being useful. She laughed, but it came out bitter. I'm useless, aren't I? I don't know where candles are in my own house. I can't start a fire. I can't even drive myself anywhere. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he knelt down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. You closed a multi-million-dollar deal last month, he said. I heard your father on the phone talking about it. You speak 3 languages. You run meetings with men twice your age who treat you like a child, and you don't back down. Elena stared at him. How do you know that? I pay attention. His dark eyes were steady on hers. You're not useless, ma'am. You're just out of your element. There's a difference. Something in her chest loosened. Tears pricked her eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. Thank you. Marcus nodded and stood. I'll be back in 30 minutes. There's bottled water in? The trunk. I'll bring it in. Stay warm. He left, and Elena was alone with the fire. She pulled her knees to her chest and watched the flames dance. Outside, the wind was howling now, a constant roar that made the house feel like a ship at sea. She thought about what Marcus had said. I pay attention. He'd been watching her, noticing her, seeing past the perfect hair and designer clothes to the person underneath. When had anyone last done that? Marcus returned with supplies. Water, protein bars, blankets from the car. He also brought tools, which he used to board up a window in the conservatory that was rattling dangerously. Generator needs a part I don't have, he said. We'll have to make do with the fire. What about food? Let's check the pantry. They went to the kitchen together. Elena felt slightly less useless this time as she searched through cabinets. She found crackers, cheese, several bottles of wine, canned soup, pasta. I can work with this, Marcus said. He found a camping stove in the utility room and set it up. Within 20 minutes, he had soup heating and cheese arranged on a plate with crackers. They carried everything back to the library and sat on the floor by the fire. The storm was raging outside now, the house shaking with each gust of wind. But in here, it felt safe, almost cozy. Elena opened a bottle of red wine and poured 2 glasses. She handed one to Marcus. "You don't have to," he said. "I'm working. We're trapped in a house during a hurricane. I think we can bend the rules." The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. He took the glass. They ate in silence for a while. The soup was plain, but hot, and Elena realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, and that felt like days ago. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Marcus glanced at her. "Yes, ma'am." "Why do you hate rich people?" His hand froze halfway to his mouth. He set down his soup cup carefully. "What makes you think I do?" "The way you look at my father. The way you tensed up when Braden's flowers arrived. The way you—" She trailed off. "The way you look at me, sometimes, like you're disappointed." Marcus was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down his wineglass and stared into the fire. "I had a younger brother," he said. His voice was low, almost swallowed by the crackling flames. "Daniel. He was 22, smart kid, funny. He was going to community college, working 2 jobs to pay for it." Elena waited, her heart already sinking. 3 years ago, he was walking home from his shift at the grocery store. Midnight, a car ran a red light and hit him in the crosswalk. Marcus's jaw tightened. Driver was some rich kid from Manhattan, drunk. His 3rd DUI, but his parents had gotten him off the other 2 with expensive lawyers. "Oh, God," Elena whispered. "Daniel died on impact. The kid who hit him, he got probation. His father made some other calls, pulled some strings. Judge was lenient because the kid had such a bright future ahead of him." Marcus's voice was bitter now. "My brother had a bright future too, but his parents didn't own half of Manhattan, so I guess his life didn't matter as much." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I joined the car service thinking I'd hate everyone like that kid, like his parents. People who think money can buy them out of consequences." He finally looked at her. "And then I met you." "What changed?" "You did. You're not like them." He shook his head. "You're trapped just like everyone else. Different cage, same bars." Elena reached out and touched his hand. His skin was warm from the fire, rough with calluses. He didn't pull away. "I'm not them, Marcus," she said softly. "I promise you, I'm not them." "I know that now." They sat like that for a long moment, hands touching, firelight dancing on their faces. Elena felt something shift between them. The wall he'd built was still there, but there were cracks in it now, light coming through. Then the house shook, a massive crash of thunder, or maybe something worse. Marcus was on his feet instantly, pulling Elena up with him. "That was too close," he said. Another crash, this one louder, the sound of breaking glass, splintering wood. "Stay behind me," Marcus ordered. They ran toward the sound. It was coming from the conservatory, the glass-walled room where Elena's grandmother had once grown orchids. When they reached it, Elena gasped. A massive oak tree had crashed through the roof. Glass covered the floor like diamonds. Rain was pouring in through the gaping hole, and the wind was howling through the house like a living thing. "Go!" Marcus shouted. "Back to the library!" They turned to run. A gust of wind slammed another section of glass inward. Shards flew through the air like knives. Elena felt herself falling. No, not falling. Marcus had tackled her to the ground, covering her body with his own. She felt the weight of him, solid and protecting, as glass rained down around them. The world went quiet, except for the storm and her own heartbeat. Then Marcus groaned. Elena's blood went cold. "Marcus!" He rolled off her slowly, and she saw blood on his white shirt. A piece of glass, maybe 4 inches long, was embedded in his left shoulder. "Oh, God," Elena breathed. "Oh, God, Marcus." "I'm fine," he said through gritted teeth. "We need to move. More glass could fall." He got to his feet, swaying slightly. Elena scrambled up and ducked under his good arm, helping support him as they stumbled back to the library. Once there, Marcus sank down by the fire. His face was pale, his jaw tight with pain. Blood was spreading across his shoulder, soaking through the white fabric. Elena's hands were shaking. She ran to get the first aid kit Marcus had brought, her mind racing. She'd never done this before. She didn't know how to help. But as she knelt beside him with the kit, something clicked into place. She wasn't useless. She could do this. "Take off your shirt," she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Marcus looked at her. "Ma'am, don't argue with me. Take it off, or I'll cut it off." The corner of his mouth twitched. He unbuttoned his shirt with his good hand and shrugged it off his injured shoulder. Elena helped him pull it away. His chest was bare now, muscled and scarred, but she forced herself to focus on the wound. The glass was lodged just below his collarbone. Not deep enough to hit anything vital, she hoped, but it needed to come out. "This is going to hurt," she said. "I've had worse." Elena took a breath and gripped the glass. "On 3, 1, 2. She pulled on 2, fast and clean. Marcus hissed through his teeth but didn't move. Blood welled up immediately. Elena grabbed gauze and pressed it to the wound, her hands steady now. She'd found something, a purpose, a way to be useful. She cleaned the wound with antiseptic, Marcus flinching as it burned. Then she applied butterfly bandages to hold the edges together and wrapped his shoulder with medical tape. When she finished, she sat back. Her hands were covered in his blood. She was shaking again, but this time with relief. "You did good," Marcus said quietly. His eyes were warm on her face. Elena looked up at him. He was shirtless, bandaged, his dark skin glowing in the firelight. Blood stained his hands and chest. He looked like a warrior from some ancient story. "Thank you," she whispered, "for protecting me." "Always," he said. The word was simple, but the way he said it made her breath catch. They stayed like that, kneeling on the floor, the storm raging outside. Elena's hands were still on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Marcus's good hand came up to cup her face. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of the storm, of you being hurt, of what? Of how much I want you to kiss me." The words hung between them. Marcus's eyes darkened. His thumb traced her cheekbone, gentle despite the roughness of his hand. "That would be crossing a line," he said. "I don't care about lines." "You should. Tomorrow you'll go back to your life. I'll go back to mine." "What if I don't want to?" Elena leaned closer. "What if I'm tired of my life? What if I want something real?" Marcus searched her face, looking for doubt. Elena let him see everything, her fear, her loneliness, her hunger for connection. "Elena," he said, just her name, soft and rough at the same time. Then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant. His lips were warm and soft, questioning. Elena answered by pressing closer, her hands sliding up to his neck. The kiss deepened, became something fierce and desperate. All the tension of the past days, all the unspoken words and careful distance, came pouring out. Marcus's good arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her against him. Elena felt the solid strength of his body, the heat of his skin, the way he held her like she was precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he said. Probably. But neither of them moved. Outside, the storm howled on. But inside, by the fire, two people who'd been alone for too long had finally found each other. And for the first time in years, Elena St. James felt like she was home. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through the library windows. For a moment, she was confused. Why was she on the floor? Why was she wrapped in blankets that smelled like wood smoke and something else, something warm and masculine? Then she remembered. The storm, the tree, Marcus's blood on her hands, the kiss. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. Marcus was across the room, standing by the window with his back to her. He'd found a clean shirt somewhere, probably from the bags they'd brought. His injured shoulder was still bandaged. She could see the white gauze through the thin fabric. "You're awake," he said without turning around. His voice was carefully neutral. "How long was I asleep?" "A few hours. It's almost 9. He finally turned to look at her. His face was closed off again, that wall back in place. "Storm passed around dawn. Roads should be clearing soon." Elena stood, the blanket falling away. She was still in yesterday's clothes, rumpled and stained. Her hair was a mess. She probably looked terrible, but she didn't care. "Marcus, I made coffee." He gestured to a camping stove where a pot was heating. "Found some instant in the pantry. It's not great, but it's hot." He was deflecting, putting distance between them with mundane details. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "We need to talk about last night," she said. "Last night was a mistake." Marcus's voice was flat. "We were scared. Adrenaline. It didn't mean anything." "Don't do that." Elena walked toward him. "Don't pretend it didn't happen." "It happened, and now it's over." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Pain, regret, resignation. "You're going back to your world. I'm going back to mine. That's how it works." "What if I don't want it to work that way?" "Doesn't matter what you want." His voice was harder now. "You're Elena St. James. You have a penthouse and a boardroom and a father who expects you to marry someone like Braden. I'm your driver. That's all I'll ever be to people like—" The sound of a helicopter cut him off. They both froze. The noise grew louder, closer. Through the window, Elena could see it circling the house, looking for a place to land. "Who is that?" Marcus asked. Elena felt dread wash over her. She knew exactly who it was. "My father." The helicopter landed on the front lawn, its blades whipping the wet grass. Elena watched through the window as 2 men climbed out. Her father, Richard St. James, in an expensive suit that somehow wasn't even wrinkled, and behind him, smirking, was Braden. "No," Elena whispered. "No, no, no." "Who's the other man?" "My ex-fiancé." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You want me to— Just stay here. Please, let me handle this." She walked to the front door on shaking legs. Before she could open it, her father burst through, Braden right behind him. "Thank God," Richard said, but his voice held no relief, only irritation. "The roads are a disaster. We had to charter a helicopter. Do you have any idea how much that cost?" Elena stared at him. "Hello to you too, Dad." "The house?" He looked around the entrance hall. "Any damage?" "The conservatory is destroyed. A tree went through the roof." Richard swore. "That's going to cost a fortune to repair. I knew I should have sent professionals instead of—" He stopped. His eyes had landed on something behind Elena. She turned. Marcus had followed her out of the library. He was standing in the hallway, his shirt rumpled, his bandaged shoulder visible through the thin fabric. He looked like he'd just woken up, like he'd spent the night here, which he had. but not the way her father was clearly imagining. "Who the hell is this?" Richard demanded. "My driver," Elena said quickly. "He drove me here yesterday. We got caught in the storm." "Your driver?" Richard's voice was dangerous now. He walked closer to Marcus, looking him up and down like he was inspecting livestock. "And he spent the night here? With you? Alone?" "We were trapped by the hurricane. Get out," Richard said to Marcus, not yelling. Somehow that made it worse. "Get out of my house. Now." Marcus's face was stone. "Yes, sir." "Dad, stop," Elena started. But Braden was laughing. He stepped forward, looking between Marcus and Elena with cruel amusement. "Oh, this is perfect." The Ice Queen finally melted, and for the help no less. "Shut up, Braden," Elena said. "What, am I wrong?" Braden circled Marcus like a shark. "You think you're something special? Think you can climb the ladder by warming her bed?" "Step back," Marcus said quietly. His voice was calm, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely controlled anger in his eyes. "Or what?" Braden pushed closer. "You'll forget your place? You're nothing. You drive cars. You open doors. That's all you'll ever—" Marcus moved so fast, Elena barely saw it. 1 second, Braden was in his face. The next, Marcus had Braden's wrist locked in some kind of hold that made Braden yelp in pain and drop to his knees. "Marcus, don't!" Elena started. "I said step back." Marcus's voice was ice cold. "I've been polite. I've been professional. But if you put your hands on me again, we're going to have a problem." "Let him go," Richard said. His voice was shaking with rage. "Let him go right now, or I'll have you arrested." Marcus released Braden, who scrambled backward, clutching his wrist. "You're insane," Braden spat. "I'm calling the police. That's assault." "You touched me first," Marcus said calmly. "That's assault. Mine was self-defense, but call whoever you want." Richard pulled out his wallet. He counted out bills, hundreds, Elena saw, and threw them at Marcus's feet. The money scattered across the marble floor like fallen leaves. "That's for your silence," Richard said, "about whatever did or didn't happen here. You keep your mouth shut, and we'll forget this ever happened. Otherwise, I'll make sure you never work in this city again." Elena watched the money flutter to the ground, watched Marcus stare at it, his face unreadable. She wanted to say something, to defend him, to tell her father he was wrong about everything. But the words stuck in her throat. Because part of her, the part that had been trained since birth to care about appearances, about the family name, about what people would think, was terrified. Terrified of what would happen if she spoke up. Terrified of losing everything. The silence stretched out. Marcus looked at the money, then at Richard, then at Elena. She saw the exact moment his expression changed, saw the hope drain out of his eyes, replaced by something that looked like disappointment, or maybe resignation. "Keep your money," Marcus said quietly. He turned and walked toward the door, not looking at Elena, not looking at anyone. "Marcus, wait." Elena finally found her voice, but it came out weak, uncertain. He stopped in the doorway. For a second, she thought he might turn around, might give her a chance to explain, to apologize, to fix this. Instead, he just kept walking. Elena heard the front door close, heard footsteps on gravel. Then silence. "Good riddance," Braden muttered, still rubbing his wrist. Elena turned on him. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out." Her voice was rising now, all the fear and shame turning into rage. "You show up here uninvited, you insult someone who saved my life last night, and you think you have any right to be in this house?" "Elena," her father started. "You too," she said. Both of you, get back in your helicopter and leave. Richard's face went red. You don't give me orders. This is my house. Then I'll leave. Elena grabbed her coat from the hall closet. I'll walk to town if I have to. Don't be dramatic. We came here to rescue you. I didn't need rescuing. Elena was shouting now, and she didn't care. I was fine. Marcus kept me safe, he protected me, and you treated him like trash. He is trash, Richard said coldly. He's a driver, that's all. And whatever you think happened between you two? Nothing happened. But even if it had, it would be none of your business. Elena's hands were shaking. I'm 28 years old. I don't need your permission to live my life. As long as you work for me, as long as you carry the St. James name, then maybe I should quit. The words were out before she could stop them. Maybe I should leave St. James Hotels and do something else. Anything else. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard stared at her like she'd slapped him. Braden looked gleeful, like he was watching a soap opera. You don't mean that, Richard said finally. I don't know. Elena pulled on her coat. But I know I can't be here right now, with either of you. She walked out the door. The morning air was crisp and clean, washed by the storm. Branches and leaves littered the lawn. The helicopter sat like a giant insect on the grass. The town car was gone. Marcus was gone. Elena started walking down the driveway, her heels crunching on gravel. She had no idea where she was going, no plan, no phone signal. But she kept walking anyway, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant facing what she'd just done. She'd hesitated for just a few seconds, but it had been enough. Marcus had seen her fear, her weakness, her inability to stand up to her. Father. And he'd walked away. She couldn't blame him. Halfway down the drive, she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around, hoping, but it was Braden. You can't actually be mad at me, he said, jogging to catch up. That guy was completely out of line. He assaulted me. You pushed him first. Barely. Braden reached for her arm. Elena, come on. Let's go back to the city. We can get lunch, talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. She pulled her arm free. We broke up. It's over. You don't mean that. Braden's smile was condescending. You're just upset. The storm, the stress, your father? I get it, but running off with the help isn't going to solve anything. He has a name. Marcus. I don't care what his name is. Braden stepped closer, and Elena could smell his expensive cologne, could see the smugness in his eyes. You belong with someone from your own world, someone who understands the responsibilities that come with your name. Someone like you? Exactly like me. He reached for her again, his fingers closing around her wrist. We're meant to be together. Your father knows it. My father knows it. Everyone knows it except you. Let go of me. Elena. I said let go. Braden's grip tightened. You're being ridiculous. Just calm down and... A car horn blared. They both turned. The town car was coming back up the drive, moving fast. It skidded to a stop 20 feet away, and Marcus got out. He looked at Elena, at Braden's hand on her wrist. His eyes went cold. Get in the car, he said to Elena. She's fine, Braden said. We're having a conversation. Doesn't look like a conversation. Marcus walked toward them, slow and deliberate. Looks like you're holding her against her will. This is none of your business. Elena. Marcus ignored Braden completely, his eyes locked on hers. Do you want to be having this conversation? No, she whispered. Then get in the car. Braden laughed. You can't be serious. You think you can just... Marcus moved between them, breaking Braden's grip on Elena's wrist with one smooth motion. He didn't hurt him, didn't threaten him, just stepped in the way, a wall of muscle and quiet determination. "You can stay here and argue," Marcus said. "Or you can let her make her own choices. Up to you." Braden looked at Marcus, then at Elena. He must have seen something in her face, because his expression turned ugly. "You'll regret this," he said to Elena. "Both of you? My father knows people. Your father knows people. You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities, from your family name, and nothing will happen?" "I don't know," Elena said. Her voice was steadier now. "But I'm willing to find out." She walked past Braden, past Marcus, and got in the back seat of the town car. Through the window, she saw Marcus and Braden face off for another second. Then Marcus turned and got in the driver's seat. The car pulled away, leaving Braden standing on the gravel drive, alone. Elena watched the estate disappear behind them. Her father would be furious. There would be consequences. She'd probably just destroyed her career, her relationship with her family, everything she'd worked for. But as they turned onto the main road and picked up speed, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Free. They drove in silence for 20 minutes. Elena watched the storm-damaged landscape roll past. Fallen trees, flooded fields, power lines down. The hurricane had changed everything. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "Where do you want to go?" "I don't know." Elena laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "Not back to the city, not yet. There's a diner about 10 miles from here. We could get some breakfast, figure things out." "Okay." More silence. Elena couldn't read Marcus's expression in the mirror. His face was carefully blank, professional. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For not defending you, for hesitating. You deserved better than that." Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. "You were scared of your father. I understand. That's not an excuse." "No," he agreed, "but it's a reason." The diner was a small place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. It was mostly empty. Storm cleanup was keeping people busy. Marcus held the door for Elena, and they slid into a booth by the window. A waitress came over, her name tag reading Betty. She looked at them, Marcus in his chauffeur's clothes, Elena in her designer coat, and raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "2 coffees," Marcus said, "and whatever breakfast special you've got." "Coming right up, hun." When she left, Elena finally looked at Marcus properly. Really looked at him. His shoulder was still bandaged. There were dark circles under his eyes. He'd come back for her even after she'd let him down. "Why did you come back?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I was halfway to the city when I realized I couldn't leave you there, with them. So I turned around. You could have just kept driving, started your life over somewhere else." "Could have." He met her eyes. "But then I wouldn't be here with you." Elena felt tears building again. "Marcus, I need you to understand something." His voice was serious now. "What happened last night, that wasn't nothing to me. You weren't nothing. But your world and mine, they don't mix. You saw how your father looked at me, how Braden talked to me. That's not going to change just because we want it to." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying this ends badly. You know it. I know it." He reached across the table and took her hand. "But I'm also saying I don't care. If you want to try, if you want to see where this goes, I'm in, all in. But you have to be sure. Because once we do this, there's no going back." Elena looked at their hands, her pale skin against his dark, her manicured nails against his calloused fingers. They were so different, From different worlds, different lives. But she'd never felt safer than when he held her. Never felt more seen. "I'm sure," she said. Marcus smiled. A real smile this time, one that reached his eyes and made him look younger, lighter. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." The waitress brought coffee and plates of eggs and toast. They ate and talked, really talked, for the first time. Marcus told her about growing up in Queens, about his mother who still lived in the same apartment he'd grown up in, about his time in the Marines, the friends he'd lost, the reasons he'd come home. Elena told him about the pressure of being a St. James, about her mother who'd died when she was 12, about feeling trapped in a life that looked perfect from the outside, but felt empty inside. By the time they finished eating, it was almost noon. Elena's phone had finally gotten signal, and it was exploding with messages. Her father, Braden, her assistant, everyone wanting to know where she was, what she was doing, when she was coming back. She turned the phone off. "I need to go back eventually," she said. "Face the consequences." "I know. But not today." Marcus nodded. "Not today." They drove back to the city slowly, taking back roads, stopping when they felt like it. They got gas at a tiny station where the attendant stared at them like they were from another planet. They walked through a town square where volunteers were cleaning up storm damage, and Elena helped carry branches for an hour, her expensive coat forgotten. It was evening by the time they reached the city limits. The skyline looked different now. Some buildings dark from power outages, others lit up like nothing had happened. "Your place?" Marcus asked. No. Elena didn't want to go back to that cold penthouse, that lonely life. "Can we go to your place? Just for tonight?" Marcus glanced at her in the mirror. "It's not what you're used to." Good. He drove them to Queens, to a neighborhood of brick row houses and corner stores. Kids played on the sidewalk, even though it was getting dark. People sat on stoops, talking and laughing. Marcus parked in front of a narrow house with a small front yard. "This is me." Inside, the house was small but warm. There were photos on the walls. Marcus as a little boy. A woman who must be his mother. A young man who looked like Marcus, but softer. His brother. "I should have cleaned," Marcus said, suddenly awkward in his own space. "It's perfect." Elena meant it. There were books everywhere, stacked on shelves and tables. A worn leather couch that looked comfortable. Everything lived in and real. They sat on the couch, leaving space between them at first. Then Elena moved closer. Marcus put his arm around her, careful of his injured shoulder. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we take it one day at a time. I keep driving, you keep running your empire. We figure out how to make this work. My father will try to stop us. Let him try. Braden will make trouble. Let him." Elena turned to look up at Marcus. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple." He cupped her face in his hand. "I want to be with you. You want to be with me. Everything else is just noise." He kissed her then, slow and deep. Elena sank into it, into him, letting everything else fall away. The fear, the doubt, the voices telling her this was wrong. Because this was the first thing that had felt right in years. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Tonight. Just tonight." "Okay." They stayed up late, talking and kissing and talking some more. Marcus made tea in his tiny kitchen. Elena told him about the Meridian deal, and he actually listened, asked smart questions, made her see it differently. Eventually they fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, exhausted but happy. And for one perfect night, Elena St. James let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, love was enough. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of a woman's voice. She sat up quickly, disoriented. She was on Marcus's couch, covered with a soft blanket she didn't remember him putting over her. Morning light streamed through the windows, and in the kitchen, someone was talking. Telling you she's going to break your heart. Girls like that always do. Ma, please. That was Marcus's voice, quiet and patient. I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying she's from a different world. You think her family is going to accept you? You think this ends well? Elena's stomach clenched. She stood up, smoothing down her wrinkled clothes, and walked toward the kitchen. A small woman with gray-streaked hair and Marcus's eyes was standing at the stove, making eggs. She looked up when Elena appeared, and her expression shifted. Not hostile, but wary. Good morning, Elena said softly. Morning. The woman's voice was neutral. I'm Patricia, Marcus's mother. Elena, she felt ridiculous introducing herself. Patricia clearly knew exactly who she was. Coffee's fresh, Patricia said, turning back to the stove. You take anything in it? Just black, thank you. Marcus handed her a mug, his eyes apologetic. Ma surprised us. She has a key. I called last night, Patricia said. You didn't answer. I got worried, so I came over this morning to check on you. She glanced at Elena. Imagine my surprise. The three of them sat at Marcus's small kitchen table. Patricia had made enough eggs and toast for everyone, and Elena found herself eating breakfast with her driver and his mother, feeling more out of place than she'd ever felt in a boardroom. So, Patricia said after a few bites, you and my son. Ma, Marcus started. It's okay, Elena said. She looked at Patricia directly. I care about your son, a lot, and I know this looks complicated. Complicated? Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one word for it. You know. What I see? I see a woman who's going to play with my boy's heart until her real life comes calling. Then she'll go back to her penthouse and her rich friends, and Marcus will be left picking up the pieces. It's not like that, Elena said. Then what is it like? You going to introduce him to your father? Take him to your fancy parties? Or is this just a fun little adventure before you go back to dating men like Braden? Patricia, Marcus said, his voice firm. That's enough. Don't you Patricia me. I'm your mother. I'm allowed to worry. She turned back to Elena. Daniel died because some rich kid thought the rules didn't apply to him. I won't watch another one of my sons get hurt by people who think other people's lives don't matter. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I would never. You already did. Patricia's voice was softer now, but no less pointed. Marcus told me what happened yesterday. How your father treated him. How you didn't say anything. The words hit, like a slap. Elena looked at Marcus, but he was staring at his plate. He'd told his mother everything, which meant he'd been more hurt by her silence than he'd let on. You're right, Elena said quietly. I was a coward. I was scared of my father, scared of losing everything I'd worked for. But I'm not scared anymore. She looked at Patricia. I know you don't have any reason to trust me, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I'm not like the people who hurt your family. Patricia studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed. Marcus is a grown man. He makes his own choices. But if you hurt him, if you treat him like he's less than you, I will make your life very difficult, St. James' name or not. That's fair, Elena said. The tension at the table eased slightly. They finished breakfast in a more comfortable silence. Patricia asked about the storm damage at Silver Leaf, and Elena found herself describing the fallen tree, the broken conservatory, the night without power. Patricia listened, occasionally glancing at Marcus with a mother's concern for his injured shoulder. When breakfast was over, Patricia stood to leave. At the door, she pulled Marcus into a tight hug, then surprised Elena by hugging her too. "Take care of each other," she said. "And Marcus, bring her to Sunday dinner next week. If this is real, I want to get to know her properly." After she left, Marcus and Elena stood in the small living room, suddenly alone again. "I'm sorry about that," Marcus said. "She means well, but she's protecting you. I get it." Elena moved closer to him. "And she's right. About yesterday. I let you down. We don't have to keep talking about it." "Yes, we do." Elena took his hands. "Because if we're going to do this, really do this, we need to be honest with each other. So here's my honesty. I was terrified yesterday. My father has controlled my life for so long that standing up to him felt impossible. But then I watched you walk away, and I realized something worse than losing my father's approval." "What's that?" "Losing you." Elena's voice was shaking. "Losing the one person who sees me as Elena, not as the St. James heiress or the trophy girlfriend or the perfect daughter. Just me." Marcus pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "You didn't lose me. I came back, remember?" "I know, but next time, if there is a next time, I'll be braver. I promise." They stood like that for a while, holding each other in the morning light. Then Marcus's phone rang. He answered it, and Elena saw his expression change. "When?" A pause. "I understand. Thank you for letting me know." He hung up, his face troubled. "What is it?" Elena asked. "That was the car service. They got a call from St. James Hotels. You're requesting a new driver, effective immediately." Elena felt cold wash over her. "I didn't request anything." "I know, your father did. Used your name." Marcus's jaw tightened. "They're terminating my contract, effective today." "He can't do that?" "He can. He's one of their biggest clients. They're not going to choose me over the St. James account." Marcus set his phone down carefully. "It's fine. I'll find other work." But Elena could see it wasn't fine. This was her father's opening move, cutting Marcus off from his livelihood, making it clear that dating Elena came with consequences. "No," Elena said. "No, he doesn't get to do this." She grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Found the number she needed. Dialed. "Elena?" Her assistant's voice was cautious. "Are you okay? Your father has been trying to reach you." "I need you to do something for me. Quietly." Elena's voice was steady now, determined. "Pull up the Meridian deal files, all of them, and send them to my personal email." "Miss St. James, I don't think—" "Do it now, please. And then I need you to schedule a meeting with the Meridian CEO. Tell him I want to discuss the partnership terms. Just him and me. No one else from St. James Hotels." There was a long pause. "Your father is going to be very angry." "I know. Do it anyway." Elena hung up and turned to Marcus. "I'm going to fix this." "Elena, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." She grabbed her coat. "I've spent my whole life trying to please my father, trying to prove I'm worthy of the family name. But you know what? I'm done. If he wants to play games, fine. But he's about to learn that I'm better at this than he thinks." Marcus caught her hand. "What are you planning?" "I'm going to close the Meridian deal, on my own terms, without St. James Hotels." She saw his eyes widen. "And then I'm going to start my own boutique hotel company. Something smaller, more personal, something that's mine. That's a huge risk." "I know." Elena smiled. "But I learned something from you. Sometimes the biggest risk is playing it safe." Marcus pulled her close and kissed her, hard and quick. "Then let's do it. But first, you need to go home, get cleaned up, get your head in the game, and I need to start calling other car services." You're not going to work for another car service. Elena, you're going to work for me. I'll need a driver. Someone I trust completely. Someone who won't sell stories to the tabloids. She grinned. Interested? Marcus laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his face. You're serious. Completely, unless you think it's a bad idea. Mixing business and... He kissed her again, shutting her up. It's a terrible idea, he said against her lips. Let's do it. The next 2 days were a blur. Elena went back to her penthouse and worked around the clock. She contacted the Meridian CEO and pitched him directly, a smaller, more personalized partnership than what St. James Hotels could offer. She emphasized quality over quantity, boutique luxury over massive chains, and she did it all without her father's name backing her up. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. Marcus drove her to meetings, but he was more than just her driver now. He was her sounding board, her reality check, the person who reminded her to eat when she forgot, who told her when her pitch was too aggressive or not aggressive enough. They worked late into the nights, sitting at her dining room table with papers spread everywhere. Marcus would make coffee and sandwiches while Elena ran numbers. Sometimes they'd take breaks and just talk about their childhoods, their dreams, the futures they'd imagined before life got in the way. Elena's father called 17 times. She didn't answer. Braden showed up at her building once. The doorman turned him away. And slowly, piece by piece, Elena built something new. On the 3rd day, she got the call. Miss St. James? The Meridian CEO's voice was warm. I've discussed your proposal with my board. We're very impressed. We'd like to move forward, with you, not St. James Hotels. Elena's hand shook as she held the phone. Thank you. You won't regret this. I know we won't. You've got vision, Miss St. James, and courage. That's worth more than a famous name any day. When she hung up, Marcus was watching her from across the room. Well? He asked. We did it. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. I did it. Then she was running to him, and he was lifting her up, spinning her around in her pristine penthouse like they were kids. She was laughing and crying at the same time, and Marcus was smiling that rare, beautiful smile that she'd already fallen in love with. I'm so proud of you, he said, setting her down but not letting go. We should celebrate, Elena said. Dinner, somewhere nice, my treat. Actually, Marcus said, I have a better idea. That Sunday, Elena found herself standing on the stoop of Patricia's house in Queens, holding a bouquet of flowers and feeling more nervous than she'd felt before any business meeting. She's going to hate me, Elena said. She's not going to hate you. Marcus squeezed her hand. She's going to grill you like a detective, but she won't hate you. The door opened. Patricia stood there in an apron, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked at Elena, then at the flowers, then at Marcus. You brought the white girl to Sunday dinner, she said. Marcus started. I'm kidding. Patricia's face broke into a smile. Mostly? Come in, dinner's almost ready. The house smelled amazing, something rich and savory that made Elena's mouth water. Patricia led them to a small dining room where the table was set for 4. 4? Elena asked. I invited your assistant, Patricia said. Angela, right? She called me to say thank you for the advice I gave her about dealing with difficult bosses. We got to talking, and I figured she could use a home-cooked meal too. Elena stared at her. You and my assistant have been talking? Someone had to make sure you were treating my son right. Angela's been keeping me updated. Patricia winked. Don't worry, I like what I've heard so far. Dinner was loud and warm and chaotic in the best way. Patricia's cooking was incredible. curry chicken and rice and peas that tasted like comfort food and home. Angela showed up with wine and stories about the chaos at St. James Hotels now that Elena had left. Apparently, Richard was scrambling to save face with clients who'd heard Elena had closed the Meridian deal independently. "He's telling everyone you're having a breakdown," Angela said. "That the stress got to you and you're taking time off for mental health." "Of course he is," Elena said, but she wasn't angry. She was too happy, sitting in this warm kitchen with these people who'd somehow become hers. After dinner, Marcus and Elena did the dishes while Patricia and Angela talked in the living room. Elena washed, Marcus dried, and they moved together like they'd been doing this for years. "Your mom is amazing," Elena said. "She likes you, I can tell." "How can you tell?" "She cooked her best meal. That's her way of saying you're family now." Elena's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Family." Marcus set down his dish towel and turned her to face him. "Too fast?" "No?" Elena smiled, her eyes wet. "Just right." He kissed her there in his mother's kitchen, soapy hands and all, and Elena felt something she'd been missing her whole life. She felt home. 6 months later, Elena stood outside a small office building in downtown Manhattan. The sign above the door read, "Meridian Boutique Collection," in elegant script. Her company, her dream. The vintage car pulled up to the curb, a beautiful restored Mustang that Marcus had been working on in his spare time. He got out and walked around to open her door, but Elena was already stepping out. "Front seat, remember?" she said. "Old habits." Marcus grinned. She slid into the passenger seat, and he got in beside her. They'd had this argument a dozen times. Over the past 6 months, Marcus still felt weird about her not sitting in the back. But Elena had finally convinced him that she didn't need a driver anymore. She needed a partner. "Big day," Marcus said, starting the engine. "Huge day. First property opens tomorrow." Elena buckled her seatbelt. "Are you nervous?" "Me? I'm just along for the ride." "Liar. You designed half the guest experience protocols." "Because you asked me to." Marcus pulled into traffic. "But this is your thing, Elena. You built this." "We built this," she corrected. It was true. Over the past 6 months, Marcus had become more than her boyfriend. He'd become her business partner, her consultant, her voice of reason. He understood customer service in a way that came from years of actually serving people, not from MBA textbooks. He knew what made people feel welcomed versus what made them feel judged. And slowly, Elena had convinced him to help her build something different, something better. The first Meridian Boutique Hotel was small, only 30 rooms, but every detail was perfect, personal, the kind of place where guests felt like they were staying in someone's beautiful home rather than a corporate property. "Your father called again," Marcus said carefully. "What did he say?" "That he wants to meet, to talk. He didn't yell this time." Elena was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, she'd walked away from St. James Hotels and hadn't looked back. Her father had been furious, then cold, then silent. This was the first time he'd reached out in months. "Do you want to see him?" Marcus asked. "I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me is still so angry." "That's fair. Both things can be true." Elena looked at him, this man who'd come into her life as a silent driver and become her everything. He'd taught her about courage and honesty and what it meant to build something real. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. "I think you should do whatever feels right. If you want to rebuild that relationship, I'll support you. If you never want to see him again, I'll support that too." Marcus glanced at her. "But I also think you're a better person than he gave you credit for. And maybe he's starting to realize that." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't listening. Elena laughed and leaned over to kiss his cheek. Take me home? Your place or mine? Ours, she said. They'd moved in together 3 months ago, a brownstone in Brooklyn that Marcus had found. It was smaller than her penthouse, but had character. A real kitchen where they cooked together. A backyard where they sat on summer evenings. Space for both their lives to fit together. As they drove through the city, Elena watched the streets roll past. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, trapped in a golden cage, scared of her own shadow, desperate for approval she'd never get. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone braver, someone who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection or meeting expectations. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other even when it was hard. I love you, she said suddenly. Marcus smiled, his hand finding hers across the console. I love you too, even though I'm high maintenance. Especially because your high maintenance keeps life interesting. They pulled up to their brownstone just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus came around to open her door. Some habits died hard. But this time, Elena let him. Because it wasn't about service anymore. It was about care. Inside, they kicked off their shoes and collapsed on the couch. Marcus pulled her close, and Elena tucked herself against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. You know what's funny? She said. What? I spent my whole life trying to prove I was worthy of my father's approval, trying to earn my place in the St. James legacy. But I never felt like I'd succeeded. I always felt like I was failing. And now? Now I'm building my own legacy, and I'm doing it with you. Elena lifted her head to look at him. I don't need the St. James name anymore. I have something better. What's that? A home. A real one. Not a penthouse or an estate. Just us. Marcus kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. That's the best kind of home. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy. But inside this brownstone, two people who'd found each other against all odds settled into the quiet comfort of belonging. Elena St. James, no longer the ice queen, no longer the trapped heiress, had finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not a driver, not a rescuer, not someone to complete her, but a partner who'd walked beside her while she learned to complete herself. And that, she thought as she drifted off to sleep in Marcus's arms, was worth more than all the hotel empires in the world. Epilogue. 1 year later, Elena sat in a coffee shop across from her father. He looked older than she remembered, more gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. Smaller, somehow. The Meridian collection is doing well, he said stiffly. I've been following the press. Thank you. 4 properties now. Impressive. 5, actually. We just signed a deal in Charleston. Richard nodded, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. Elena waited. I underestimated you. I thought you needed me, needed the St. James name to succeed. I was wrong. He met her eyes. You're better at this than I ever was. You understand what people want? That personal touch, that feeling of being seen. I just built hotels. You build experiences. I learned from watching you, Elena said. I learned what to do and what not to do. Ouch. But Richard was almost smiling. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Richard said, I met him, Marcus. He came to my office. Last month? Elena's eyebrows shot up. What? He wanted to talk. Man to man, he said. Richard shook his head. He told me that he loved you, that he was planning to propose, and that he wanted to do it right. Wanted my blessing. Elena's heart was racing. What did you say? I said no. Richard saw her face and held up a hand. At first, I said no, and he just sat there. Didn't argue, didn't leave, just said, "I understand, sir. But I'm going to ask her anyway. I just thought you should know." That sounds like Marcus. He's a good man, strong, principled. The kind of man I should have been. Richard's voice was rough now. I lost your mother because I was too proud to show her I loved her. Too busy building an empire to build a life. I won't make that mistake with you. Dad. I'm saying yes to his question. And I'm asking if maybe I could be part of your life again. Not as a boss, as a father. Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I'd like that. They talked for another hour about the past, the future, the slow work of rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect. Some wounds were too deep to heal quickly, but it was a start. When Elena got home that evening, Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner. She walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. "You went to see my father," she said. Marcus tensed. "He told you." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel pressure. If you said yes, I wanted it to be because you wanted to, not because I'd gotten your father's permission." Elena turned him around. "So, you're planning to propose?" Marcus's eyes widened. "He wasn't supposed to tell you that part." "Well, he did." Elena grinned. "So? When?" "I had a whole plan. Romantic dinner, perfect moment." "Forget the plan. Ask me now." "Elena." "Ask me, Marcus." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, shook his head, and dropped to one knee right there in their kitchen, wearing jeans and a t-shirt with pasta sauce on his hands. "Elena St. James," he said. "You are the most stubborn, beautiful, complicated woman I've ever met. You drive me crazy in the best way. You make me want to be better, do better, try harder. And I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "Will you marry me?" Inside was a simple ring, nothing flashy, just a single diamond on a gold band. Perfect. "Yes," Elena said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes." He slid the ring on her finger and kissed her, and Elena thought about how far they'd come, from that first silent ride to a hurricane that changed everything, to this moment in their kitchen with their whole future ahead of them. She didn't need a driver anymore. She had found her way home. The end.